The Galactic War Council Station drifted silently through the endless darkness of space. That IT was one of the largest structures ever built by any civilization. A massive ring-shaped station orbiting a fading blue star at the center of a neutral system. From the outside, it looked like a shining crown floating in the void. Thousands of ships surrounded the station. Warships, battle cruisers, massive dreadnoughts belonging to dozens of alien empires, each one carrying the most powerful commanders in the galaxy. Inside the station, a chamber the size of a city stretched across several kilometers. Transparent crystal walls revealed the stars outside, glowing like distant fires in the blackness of space. That at the center of the room floated a gigantic holographic map of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems shimmered across the projection. Around the map sat the leaders of the most powerful civilizations ever known: the Dravic Empire, the Kreldar Collective, the Lamari Dominion, the Vexari Trade Federation, the Sorith Alliance. Empires that controlled hundreds, sometimes thousands of star systems. Each one had brought their greatest generals, massive reptilian warlords with armor-like scales, cold insectoid strategists capable of calculating entire wars in seconds, ancient beings whose species had ruled the stars for longer than humans had even existed. The room buzzed with quiet conversation. Fleet movements were being discussed, borders were being negotiated, strategies were forming, because the galaxy was standing at the edge of the largest war in its history. And every empire wanted to be ready. But among all those powerful delegations, one seat looked strangely empty, because the human representative was not sitting. He stood quietly near the edge of the council table. Alone, Commander Elias Ward, N.O. guard, N.O. assistants, N.O. advisors, N.O. fleet waiting outside the station. Just one calm human in a simple dark uniform. And almost everyone in the room thought it was ridiculous. The first one to notice him was the Dravic warlord. The massive reptilian slowly leaned forward in his seat. His armored scales scraped against the metal floor as he stood up. He towered nearly 3 meters tall. His glowing yellow eyes locked onto the human. For several seconds he studied Elias silently. Then the warlord laughed, the deep rumbling sound that echoed across the chamber. "So this is humanity?" His voice vibrated through the room like distant thunder. Other commanders turned their heads. Soon dozens of alien eyes were staring at the human. The Dravic warlord spread his massive arms. "You send one fragile creature to represent your entire species?" Quiet laughter spread around the chamber. Some aliens whispered to each other. Others openly smiled. One insectoid strategist clicked its mandibles. Perhaps humans misunderstood the invitation. "This is a war council, not a diplomatic meeting." More laughter. The Lamari commander leaned back calmly. "Humans are a young species," she said softly. "Perhaps they simply lack experience." Someone else added mockingly. "Or maybe they couldn't afford to send anyone more important." But the human did not react. Commander Elias Ward simply stood there, calm, silent, observing every alien in the chamber. His eyes moved slowly from one commander to another, studying them, their body language, their confidence, their arrogance. He looked almost curious if he were watching a fascinating experiment. And that calmness made a few of the older species uncomfortable, because warriors usually showed pride, fear, anger, emotion, but this human showed none of those things. He just watched. Finally, the council leader spoke. At the center of the table floated the projection of an ancient being known as High Arbiter Solvex. Solvex belonged to one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. For thousands of years, their species had served as neutral mediators during galactic conflicts. When wars threatened to destroy entire star systems, Solvex's people stepped in, and most civilizations respected their authority. The Arbiter studied the human carefully. "Human representative," Solvex said slowly, "you have remained silent since the council began." A pause filled the room. Do humans not wish to participate in this discussion? The chamber grew quiet. Every alien watched the human. Commander Elias Ward finally lifted his head. "My name is Commander Elias Ward." His voice was calm, controlled. and humanity prefers to observe before speaking. The Dravik warlord slammed his claw onto the council table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. You observe? His tail struck the floor angrily. My fleets control 1,000 star systems. The Kreldar strategist added coldly. Our war simulations predict total victory against any coalition present in this room. Another alien commander leaned forward. And humans think they matter in this war? The chamber waited. Everyone expected the human to look nervous or defensive. But Elias simply walked toward the center of the table, slowly. Calmly, he reached into his pocket and placed a small metallic device onto the surface of the council table. The Dravik warlord narrowed his eyes. What is that supposed to be? Elias looked up at the holographic galaxy map floating above them. Then he answered quietly. Perspective. He pressed the button, and the entire galaxy changed. The moment Commander Elias Ward pressed the small metallic device, the massive holographic galaxy map above the council table flickered. For a brief second, the projection dimmed. Then something changed. Small red lights began appearing across the star map. At first there were only a few, then dozens, then hundreds. The alien commanders leaned forward in confusion. The room filled with quiet murmurs. What are those? One of the Vexery commanders asked. The Kreldar strategist moved closer to the hologram, its compound eyes rapidly scanning the map. IT suddenly froze. That system, it said slowly, that system belongs to the Dravik Empire. Another alien pointed to a different red light. And that one is inside Lamari territory. A third commander added, that system belongs to the Vexery Trade Federation. More voices joined in. And that one. The realization began spreading across the room like a slow wave of cold. Those red lights were not random. They were located deep inside the territories of nearly every empire present at the council. The Dravik warlord's eyes narrowed dangerously. He stepped closer to the holographic map. What are those markers supposed to mean? Human. Elias stood calmly beneath the glowing stars. His voice remained steady. Those lights represent strategic influence points. The Dravik warlord growled, "Speak clearly." Elias looked around the chamber. Then he said something that made the entire room go silent. They're the places where humanity has already won. For a moment, no one reacted. Then the chamber erupted. Impossible. Humans don't even have fleets in those systems. This is a trick. You expect us to believe this nonsense. The Dravik warlord slammed both claws onto the council table. You dare lie in front of the Galactic Council? But Elias did not look intimidated. He simply pointed to one of the red lights. That system contains a major communications relay used by 4 different empires. The Dravik warlord immediately responded. Our communications network is secure. Elias tilted his head slightly. It was. He pressed another button. The star map zoomed in. Streams of encrypted signals began flowing across the holographic display. Alien commanders watched in stunned silence as the signals passed through a series of complex algorithms. The Lamari commander leaned forward. What is this? Elias answered calmly. The software architecture of your communication network. Another alien spoke slowly. That code structure, the Kreldar strategist suddenly interrupted. It's human. The room went silent again. Elias nodded. For the last 4 years, most interstellar communication systems have been running on human-developed software. The Dravik warlord growled. You hacked our networks. Elias shook his head. No, we upgraded them. He pointed to another red light on the map. This system contains one of the largest fuel processing stations in the galaxy. Several commanders recognized it immediately. That facility supplies nearly half the fleets in this region, one of them said. Elias nodded. Yes. And it uses human-designed fusion regulators. A slow, terrifying understanding began forming across the council chamber. Human technology was everywhere. Navigation systems, fuel processors, communication networks, trade algorithms. Human engineers had helped build or improve thousands of systems across the galaxy. At the time, it seemed harmless. Humans were a young civilization, innovative, helpful. Their technology was efficient and inexpensive. Most empires had happily adopted it, But now the alien commanders were realizing something they had never considered before. Humanity had quietly inserted itself into the infrastructure of the entire galaxy. Without firing a single shot, the Dravik warlord's voice became quieter. "You're suggesting," Elias finished the sentence, "that humanity doesn't need fleets in those systems." The warlord stared at him. "Because we already control the systems themselves." The chamber fell silent, and no one laughed anymore. The High Arbiter Solvex studied the star map carefully. "Human Commander," Solvex said slowly, "when did this begin?" Elias answered without hesitation, 7 years ago. 7 years. The number echoed through the minds of every commander in the room. 0.7 years of quiet expansion, 0.7 years of hidden influence, 0.7 years of preparation. The Lamari commander spoke carefully. "And what happens if those systems stop working?" Elias looked up at the glowing red lights. Then he pressed another button. 0.3 red lights suddenly disappeared. Across the council chamber, alien commanders received emergency transmissions from their home systems. The messages appeared instantly on their consoles. Navigation networks failing. Fuel processors offline. Supply fleets stranded in deep space. The room erupted into chaos. "What did you do?" the Dravik warlord roared. Elias calmly folded his hands behind his back. "We didn't attack your empires." A pause. "We simply turned off what we built." And in that moment, for the first time since the meeting began, the alien commanders began to understand. This was never about fleets. This was never about weapons. This was about control, and humanity had been quietly taking control of the galaxy for years. The council chamber remained completely silent. Dozens of alien commanders sat around the massive circular table, staring at the holographic galaxy map floating above them. For the first time in centuries, the leaders of the most powerful empires in the universe had no idea what to say. Everything they believed about power had just been challenged for thousands of years. Strength in the galaxy had been measured the same way. Fleet size, weapons, territory, but the humans standing quietly in the center of a chamber had just proven something terrifying. Power didn't come from fleets, that it came from control. The Dravik warlord slowly walked forward again. His massive claws scratched against the metal floor. His glowing yellow eyes locked on a Commander Elias Ward. "You're asking us to accept human authority over the galaxy." Elias shook his head slightly. "No, I'm asking you to accept stability." The warlord growled. "And if we refuse?" For the first time since the meeting began, Elias turned toward the massive star map again. His hand moved slowly across the projection. Hundreds of red lights still glowed across the galaxy. Then he pressed one final command on the device. The map zoomed out, much further this time, beyond the territories of the great empires, beyond the known borders of civilization. And that's when something appeared that no one in the chamber expected. Thousands more lights, blue lights. Alien commanders leaned forward in confusion. "What are those?" the Lamari commander asked. Elias answered calmly. "Human colonies." The room froze. The Dravik warlord stared at the map. "That's impossible. Humans only have a few dozen colonies." Elias shook his head. "That's what the galaxy believes." He zoomed in on a distant region of space. Several newly formed human worlds appeared. Mining colonies, research stations, shipyards. Then another region. More colonies. Another region. Even more. For 7 years, while the galaxy had been watching its rival empires, humanity had been expanding quietly into unexplored space, building new worlds, new shipyards, new fleets, preparing for a future no one else had seen coming. The Kreldar strategist spoke slowly. "You've been building an entirely new civilization outside our territory." Elias nodded. "Yes." The Dravik warlord whispered in disbelief. "How many?" Elias answered calmly, "Enough." The room fell silent again. High Arbiter Solvex studied the map for a long moment. Then the ancient being asked the most important question of the entire meeting. "Human Commander, if the empires of this council reject your proposal, what happens next?" Elias looked around the chamber. His voice remained steady. "Nothing." The commanders looked confused. Elias continued. Humanity will simply disconnect its systems from the galactic network. He pointed to the red lights again. Navigation systems, fuel processors, communication relays, trade algorithms. Everything humanity built will shut down. A long pause filled the chamber. Then he added quietly, "And when the war begins, we will step aside." The implication hit the room like a shockwave. Without human systems, the galaxy would collapse into chaos. Fleets would lose navigation, supply lines would fail, trade would disappear, and then the empires would destroy each other. The Dravik warlord slowly sat down. For the first time since the meeting began, he had nothing to say, because the truth had become painfully clear. Humanity had already won. Not through war, not through conquest, but through patience. 7 years of preparation, 7 years of observation, 7 years of building influence across the galaxy. By the time the other empires realized what had happened, the game was already over. High Arbiter Solvex finally spoke again. "The Council will vote." The chamber remained silent as the commanders looked at each other. One by one, lights appeared on the council table. Votes being cast. Seconds passed, then minutes. Finally, the results appeared on the holographic display. The proposal had passed. Humanity would become the central stabilizing power of the galaxy. The war was canceled. The Dravik warlord looked at Elias one last time. "You planned all of this?" Elias simply nodded. "Yes." The warlord stared at the human for several seconds. Then he said something no one expected. "Well played, human." Commander Elias Ward looked up at the endless stars beyond the chamber windows. For the first time since arriving at the council, he allowed himself a small smile. Because humanity had just achieved something no other civilization ever had. They had won the greatest war in galactic history, without firing a single shot. And as the council chamber slowly emptied, one truth remained clear to every empire in the galaxy. Humans were not the strongest species, but they were the most dangerous, because humans didn't fight wars the way other civilizations did. Humans won wars before they even began. The council chamber had become completely silent, and no one laughed anymore, and no one whispered. The commanders of the most powerful empires in the galaxy simply stared at the holographic map floating above the table. Hundreds of red lights, thousands of blue ones, human influence everywhere. For the first time in centuries, the great empires felt something they had almost forgotten: fear. The Dravik warlord slowly walked around the table, his massive claws scraping against the metal floor. His glowing eyes remained locked on the human. "You expect us to believe this?" he growled. "That humanity has secretly prepared fleets across the galaxy and inserted its technology into our systems without anyone noticing?" Commander Elias Ward did not look offended. Instead, he answered calmly, "You noticed?" The room shifted slightly. "You just didn't think it mattered." A few alien commanders exchanged uncomfortable glances, because the human was right. For years they had seen human engineers working across their systems, human companies installing better navigation networks, human scientists improving fuel reactors, human programmers updating communication algorithms that at the time it had seemed harmless, even helpful. Humans were young, creative. Their technology was efficient. Most empires had welcomed their assistance. But now the truth was becoming painfully clear. Every improvement had slowly tied their infrastructure to human systems. The Lamari commander spoke carefully. "If everything you say is true, then humanity could cripple half the galaxy." Elias nodded. "Yes." The Dravik warlord slammed his tail onto the floor. "Then why haven't you done it?" The human looked around the chamber. His voice remained calm. "Because humans don't want to rule the galaxy." "Then what do you want?" the warlord demanded. Elias turned back toward the star map. "What we want is simple. Balance." The galaxy projection zoomed in on several border regions where tensions between empires had been growing. "Right now," Elias continued, "the galaxy is preparing for the largest war in its history. Fleet mobilizations, military alliances, border skirmishes." He pointed toward a cluster of stars. If the Dravik Empire launches its planned invasion of the Kreldar territory, several commanders suddenly looked shocked. The Dravik warlord froze. How do you know about that? Elias ignored the question. Then the Kreldar will retaliate by attacking Lamari trade routes. The Lamari commander's eyes widened. And the Lamari Dominion, Elias continued, will respond by activating their defense pact with the Vexary Federation. The rune grew colder, because every prediction he was making was correct. The alliances, the plans, the secret military preparations. Humanity somehow knew everything. The Kreldar strategist spoke slowly. You've been watching all of us. Elias nodded. For 7 years. He pointed to the galaxy map again. If this war begins, the hologram suddenly simulated the conflict. Red explosions appeared across star systems. Entire regions of space burned. Civilizations collapsed. Trade routes disappeared. Stars turned dark. Within 10 years, Elias said quietly, more than half the civilizations in this room will cease to exist. The simulation ended. Silence filled the chamber. Even the Dravik warlord looked unsettled, because the simulation looked frighteningly realistic. High Arbiter Solvex finally spoke. You're telling us humanity has spent 7 years preparing to stop this war? Elias nodded. Yes. Solvex studied him carefully. And what exactly is humanity proposing? Elias took a slow breath. Then he said something that shocked everyone. A new galactic balance. The star map changed again. Human systems appeared at the center of several major trade routes. Human fleets were positioned between rival empires. Human technology connected communication networks across the galaxy. We will maintain the infrastructure that keeps your empires functioning, Elias explained. But in return, the room waited. No empire launches a war without human approval. The Dravik warlord roared. You expect us to give humans control over the galaxy? Elias shook his head. No, not control. Responsibility. He looked around the chamber. Because right now, humanity is the only civilization capable of stopping what's about to happen. And deep down, every commander in that room knew he might be right. The council chamber had never been this quiet before. Just moments ago, it had been filled with mocking laughter and arrogant voices. Now, no one was laughing. Alien commanders stared at their consoles as emergency messages continued arriving from across the galaxy. Navigation networks were shutting down. Fuel processors were malfunctioning. Entire supply routes were collapsing. For the first time in centuries, the powerful empires of the galaxy felt something they were not used to. Feeling uncertainty. The Dravik warlord slowly looked back at the human. His voice was lower now, more careful. You're telling us humanity could shut down half the galaxy? Commander Elias Ward stood calmly beside the glowing star map. We could, he said quietly, but we didn't. The warlord growled. That is not comforting. Elias didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stepped closer to the holographic galaxy map. His hand moved across the stars until he pointed toward a distant region of space far beyond the territories of the major empires. 7 years ago, he began, humanity realized something. That the galaxy was heading toward a war that would destroy trillions of lives. Several alien commanders shifted uncomfortably because they knew he was right. Tensions between the empires had been growing for decades. Border conflicts, trade wars, military buildups. Everyone knew a massive war was coming. The only question was when, and who would strike first. We knew we couldn't stop the war with diplomacy, Elias continued. Humans were too new, too small. So we chose a different strategy. The Dravik warlord crossed his massive arms. And what strategy was that? Elias looked up at the galaxy map. Preparation. The map zoomed out suddenly. More lights appeared, but these lights were different. They were blue. Thousands of them. The alien commanders stared in confusion. What are those? The Lamari commander asked. Elias answered calmly. Human fleets. The chamber froze. The Dravik warlord leaned forward slowly. That's impossible. Humanity doesn't have that many ships. Elias looked at him. We didn't. A pause. 7 years ago. The blue lights continued appearing across the map. Hidden fleets stationed in deep space in asteroid belts, near uncharted systems. Some positioned dangerously close to the borders of major empires. The Kreldar strategist began rapidly analyzing the data. Its voice trembled slightly. These fleet formations, They're already positioned near strategic locations. The realization spread across the chamber like a shockwave. Human fleets weren't traveling toward the battlefield. They were already there, waiting, prepared, hidden for years. The Dravik warlord whispered slowly. You've been preparing for this war longer than anyone. Elias nodded. Yes. Because humans learned something very early in our history. The room remained silent. That the best way to win a war is to make sure it never truly begins. The High Arbiter Solvex studied the map carefully. We didn't come here to discuss war, Solvex said quietly. Elias looked at the ancient being. No, we came to show you that it's already over. Several alien commanders suddenly realized the terrifying truth that if humanity shut down communication systems, controlled navigation, controlled fuel production, and already had fleets positioned across the galaxy, then every empire in the room was vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. The Dravik warlord clenched his claws. You plan to conquer us? Elias shook his head. No, that was never the goal. Then what is? The warlord demanded. Elias turned to face the council table. His voice remained calm. Stability. The word echoed through the chamber. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy, Elias continued. We want to prevent the war that all of you are about to start. He pointed toward the galaxy map. If this war begins, entire civilizations will disappear. Star systems will burn. Trillions will die. The room remained silent, because every commander in the chamber knew he was telling the truth. Elias looked at them all. So humanity spent 7 years making sure that when this moment came, we would have the power to stop it. The Dravik warlord stared at the human. His voice was almost a whisper. You didn't come here to join the war. Elias nodded. No, we came to end it. And for the first time since humanity joined the galactic community, the most powerful empires in the galaxy realized something terrifying. The youngest species in the room had already outplayed them all.